Hi everybody, I'm Stuart Russell from Limecraft, and today we're going to be discussing speech technology in the era of artificial intelligence and how it can be used in the media and production industry to help save time, simplify workflows, and drive efficiencies. With us today to discuss this are Martin Verwest, who is co-founder of Belgian media tech innovators Limecraft, and Ricardo Herrero-Simons, who is VP of Corporate Development and Strategic Partnerships at Speechmatics. Welcome to you both. Ricardo, perhaps we can get the ball rolling with you. Would you like to take a moment just to explain to everyone what Speechmatics does as a company?
I've been with the business for a long time, so one of the founding team. And what we've done over that time has evolved, but it's always been based on giving the most possible accurate speech to text that we can do. So speech to text, you take audio, you convert it into text, you timestamp it, you provide extra metadata, you do it offline, so in batch system, and you do it in real time as well. So sort of captions appearing as we speak. I'm sure we'll be putting our captions on this video afterwards. We've been doing this for 10 years. Our history goes back into the 1980s from our founder, Tony Robinson, doing that at Cambridge University. But our mission is to be the most accurate and most inclusive engine possible. So we can dive into the detail of how we achieve that, but ultimately we provide 50 languages. We are very specific around different types of accents, different types of people who might speak, and we provide a transcription system that works live, offline, that you can then translate and provide a series of different to downflow capabilities afterwards as well, such as summarization, topic extraction, entity, audio events. And we're starting to explore more with what we can do, sort of harnessing the powers of audio itself and large language models.
Thanks for that. And Martin, over to you. Perhaps you can tell everybody watching a little bit about Limecraft and the company's area of operations.
Yeah, so Limecraft in a nutshell manages media files on behalf of their customers, and customers including production companies, post-production companies, so video editing companies, broadcasters, enterprises that make more and more professional style video. And managing content is enabled by managing the data around by understanding the contents, really, by understanding the words that are being spoken, by looking at the images, and the essence is video is not self-descriptive, so it needs an archivist or a piece of artificial intelligence to describe what's in the words and the images, so you can make it searchable and reusable. That's the whole thing. A professional video producer will create per show up to 1,000 files of video, terabytes of content. That's a lot. That's really big data. And we need artificial intelligence services like speech-to-text technologies to make those contents searchable, accessible, reusable. That's the helping our customers' business. So that's what Limecraft is doing. And I think Limecraft was probably the first asset management vendor in 2013 that did a pretty good job in embedding automatic speech recognition at the core of their offerings. So not an add-on, but we realized soon enough that for a journalist or a documentary maker or a producer of reality shows, it is a critical component. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. Being able to process video files on an industrial scale. That's what we've been doing in 2013. Back then, accuracies were, Ricardo, I would say moderate. We were looking at word error rates between 10 and 20%, which is good enough to provide some searchability, but it was absolutely insufficient for applications like subtitling. Then fast forward, I believe it was 2017, when we got a project commissioned by a large British public service broadcaster asking if we could turn subtitling into software, so taking the transcript, applying business logic, which is otherwise done by a subtitle operator, and delivering subtitles that looked as close as possible to professionally produced subtitles, which I would say is currently one of our flagship applications. Thanks to Speechmatics, which delivers by far best-in-class transcriptions when it comes to accuracy, adding to that spotting algorithms, so segmentation of transcripts into something which looks like 40 characters on a line. We've pretty much automated the whole process of captioning.
Thanks for that, Martin. Ricardo, back to you again. So we're all hearing a lot about the increasing use of AI as a labor-saving tool. Perhaps you could talk about what you've been seeing in terms of trends here.
Yes, it's a broad question, and what you have to recall as well is that Speechmatics does not specialize in a front end, in a GUI, a user interface. A lot of the stuff that Martin was just describing in terms of talking about the number of characters in the line for a subtitle, we'd be terrible at providing a subtitling solution, and we search for partners like Limecraft who can integrate us really effectively, make us as seamless as possible. And so what that means is we're able to sit a little bit further back, as sort of this headless technology, which then is an API that serves lots of different types of industry. From my perspective, in terms of labor saving, I like to think of this as sort of people talk about generative AI, but I quite like the expression assistive AI, in so much as we're not, in most cases, looking to replace what human beings do, but rather we're looking to take away the boring tasks that they might do, so then they're able to be more creative.
Yeah.
So if somebody can get a 95, 99% accurate transcript through our system, and then a translation, which is also effective, then what it means is they're able to sort of spend much more time editing, sort of hashing things together, searching through the metadata, whatever it might be, to create something that is, well, truly creative in that sense. So in the media space, those are the typical areas, the typical areas that we might see. But we also obviously we serve the contact center areas of meeting platforms. We do a lot with government and defense, but it's all about how can you take away that laborious type of process to accelerate things. And again, I can go into in a few particular examples if that's helpful, but conscious sort of we might want to look at other things too. So.
No, that's you make a very interesting point there, because I think that there has been a lot of, certainly in our industry, in media and production, we see a lot of debate about the role that AI should play and where it can add value and where it can really bring about benefit. And I guess that leads me on to the next question, and back over to you, Martin. In terms of media and production, how have we seen the landscape change as AI has become much more of a trend and more of a hot topic?
You mean the landscape of AI? We're just at an interesting tipping point, I would say, where we start getting at a point where there is enough trust to offload some of those manual steps in the process, which Ricardo was referring to, and offloading that, outsourcing that to artificial intelligence. But we will always advise our customers to never leave AI unattended. AI is, by definition, by design, it's prone to errors. It has a lot of other fantastic advantages. It can process vast volumes of content, which would simply be impossible to process manually. One of our, I would say, top grossing in terms of volume customers in the UK, it's a documentary maker. They're processing on an average 1,500 hours of raw material per month. It would simply be impossible to transcribe it manually by listening to the audio and writing down the words. So when we take a step back, Stuart, we're looking at an industry whereby whether you're a small or a large producer, the volume of content which you need to process is increasing month over month, because cameras have become cheaper, because formats are changing. Reality style formats can use up to 10 or more cameras that are just running, creating extremely large volumes of content that need to be processed. And you know, it's like a perfect storm. Technology is just at the point where it's trustable enough, and bring that together, I think we will see AI becoming commodity. So beyond the hype, and specifically looking at speech technology, which is, frankly speaking, it's all technology. It's been developed here in Flanders Fields 30 years ago by Leonard and Elspie. Now we're several generations further, but I would dare say we're getting at the point where artificial intelligence is getting more accurate than a human. And what's left, it's the creative aspect of modifying the language. Because if you're creating subtitles, you don't want to be a verbatim representation of what's in the audio. It needs to be tweaked. Written words are different than spoken words. That's the more subtle aspects. I do believe artificial intelligence has a role to play in that area as well. We're not there yet. It's probably the next step. And then subject for debate and maybe a bit controversial statement, I think, besides applications like subtitling and synthetic dubbing, we will see the industry making baby steps towards auto editing in the near future. A lot of companies and people are currently talking about generative AI. Well, we have seen nothing yet. It will be beyond producing text. We will see applications popping in, creating synthetic images that will look really, really good.
It's interesting just to see how the landscape is going to change over the next few years. I'd like to just jump back to this issue of accuracy, because it's something that you've both touched on. Ricardo, I'm sure in our industry, in media and production, accuracy obviously is a huge it's a huge concern. Can you perhaps talk a little bit about how you manage that, how you deal with that? Of
course, yeah, and obviously accuracy is the thing that we hold most important at Speechmatics above everything else. So our board are frustrated with how much we continue to pump into R&D to keep pushing the accuracy there, because we tell them that if we're not the best, then it's just not worth being here. So from our perspective, we've managed to maintain our lead in accuracy over the last decade across a number of different innovations. It's not been one particular thing that has given that jump. It's been over time, so we've built our own proprietary pipelines. We've integrated the best. Well, at the very beginning, we went with the right open source route to do certain things. We now own all of that ourselves. We've used self-supervised pre-training. There's lots of very technical things we can talk about, but perhaps the analogy that I can use best is right now in our engine, we haven't gone down this route of end-to-end models, which a lot of people have gone down, because from our perspective, there's no free lunch in machine learning, and therefore, if you go down the end-to-end model route, you're not going to be able to cater as widely for all the different languages that you might need. You're not going to be able to use custom dictionaries effectively. So what we've essentially done is said, okay, what have we got? Well, we've got millions of hours of training data, but we've also got millions of hours of unlabeled training data. And so when you build a language at Speechmatics, we do this first pre-training step, which is where we take our engine and we expose it to these years of audio, right? And this audio isn't labeled. There's no transcript with it. It's just listening. And it trains over time, and it learns to understand what we call representations. The analogy I use for this is like taking a small child, maybe 2, 3, 4 years old, and going and living in another country for 6 months. So let's say you go and live in France, age 3, for 6 months. And you're not doing French lessons when you're there per se. You're not doing label training, as you might call it. but you're listening and you're hearing and you're absorbing the accents, the environment, how people might talk, and it's just essentially it's passive training in that sense. If you then bring that child back to let's say, well, for me, the UK, and then it starts French lessons at school, what you can be sure of is that that child learning French will have a huge advantage compared to somebody else who's learning French from scratch, despite never had any labeled data training. And our engines work the same way. We put in this huge stage of pre-training, and then we provide a small amount of, I say small amount, a smaller amount of data compared to our competitors. Maybe on our biggest models, sort of 50,000 hours, on our smallest models, 500 hours. And we're able to get the same quality of accuracy with our engine with roughly 100 times less training data, because we understand the essence of the audio. We already know what we're looking for. Our engine has passively learned what it needs to do, and it's got that head start on that sort of French lesson learning. So that's the main differentiation that we're driving at the moment in terms of accuracy. But what it also means is because our engine in its previous stage has spent has spent so long listening to lots of different accents, lots of different languages. I mean, our Turkish system will have Dutch training data in it, right? It's because we wanted to get as broad an exposure as possible. And what that means is that we perform incredibly strongly on different accents, because obviously in this conversation, we all have different accents. We all speak English in a different way. There are lots of people who speak languages as essentially their secondary or tertiary language. And so again, it enables us to have a very inclusive and global model when it comes to accuracy. There are other things we're continuing to do on that front, but again, we could take up the whole meeting talking about that. But what I would like to comment on really quickly is one of the things that Martin mentioned in terms of the quality of accuracy being good enough, and then what matters next. And for us, what we're constantly seeing, as Martin said, lots more hours are being transcribed, which we're delighted with, right? But also the requirement for those hours continues to shift. I think Martin said that you needed 80% to be able to do all right search. You need 95% plus to be able to do good subtitles. But then as speech recognition starts to power the human to machine interactions of the future, as we're talking directly to an LLM, and especially in sort of life and death situations. So if we're thinking about sort of court transcription, or if we're talking about in a medical environment, a live, imagine the position where imagine the quality of an engine you need to get to, where you have a live sort of first response or sort of paramedic that is being run by an AI, because you know what, that reduces your wait time, which is a good thing if you can speak to somebody and sort of get the response. But if you make a mistake, you're done. And so for us, we're always there sort of using the shining beacon of how do we get to human level and beyond level of accuracy and latency and understanding, because that for us is what is going to open the most doors and allow us to continue pushing the frontier.
This is a very interesting point just made by Ricardo. The more you enter into a mission critical environment, and now I'm not necessarily claiming that Limecraft is in a mission critical environment, although if we're processing news feeds for a very large worldwide operating news agency, it's pretty close to a mission critical environment. If we transcribe the wrong thing, that news feed will be disclosed to thousands of news desks worldwide with the wrong information that can have devastating results. Point I was going to make is the more you go into automated processes, the impact of a single error can have dramatic effects. This is not the case in a slow and rather manual process. If you make a mistake, it's covered with a blanket of love. Nobody sees it. It's a ripple in the overall picture. If you start automating and speeding up your machine, your processing pipeline, the effect of a single glitch in quality at the output of the machine can be millions in damage. So this is why from a Limecraft perspective and being active in the core of our customers' services, we look for the best possible accuracy like a manicas. And that's not just recognizing the right words. It's also capitalization, speaker segmentation, punctuation. It has to be as close to perfection or beyond in all these aspects. And that's where I think Speechmatics and Limecraft have created a beautiful partnership.
I'd like to just picking up on that. I'd like to talk just a little bit, or ask you, Martin, specifically a little bit about AI. I mean, obviously, what Speechmatics does with Limecraft, you know, it's an important ingredient as part of the AI mix. Limecraft won an award at the end of last year for the company's use of AI in its media asset management solution. What sort of value, and I'm thinking about the point you made about mission critical applications. I mean, what sort of value do you really see Limecraft's customers getting from AI?
Let me put it this way. What the entire cohort of competitors is doing is throwing a bunch of point solutions to their customers and then see what sticks. Overall, the result of AI, when you would be operating a hodgepodge of point solutions, is inaccurate, incomplete, a tsunami of data which is completely unmanageable. And what Limecraft is doing is refining, distilling all that information down to a single timeline. Taking into account any a priori data that might be available, production documents, voiceover scripts, auto cues from a camera, feeding that as input in the engine, blending it with all other aspects, so that if you're a journalist, you don't need to wonder about the technology. You just want to ask the search engine who's crawling your database of video files. You just want to ask, give me all the video clips where French President Macron is happy and is using these words in his speech. So that type of advanced search query, looking at different aspects of image, sound, any data that was available prior to the recording. So effectively integrating all these point solutions into a single solution that works, that's accurate, that allows efficient retrieval of those video assets. That's what Limecraft is bringing to the table.
And I guess finally, just to kind of wrap things up, you've both touched on the future a little bit during the course of this conversation. But Ricardo, back over to you. How do you see the landscape changing over the next 3 to 5 years for Speechmatics? How do you see your company developing?
It's a big question, and obviously things have been mad for the last year or so in the AI space, and will continue to be so. I think taking a step back, the way we look at it is that we see obviously the emergence of LLMs, of ChatGPT-4 has transformed the world to an extent, and it will continue to do so. And we see those LLMs as the brain that is going to be fundamental in so many parts of so many businesses and so many industries. For Speechmatics, we're not going to build our own LLM. We don't have the resource, the time, or the inclination to do so. We also see that as becoming, I think Martin mentioned commoditization earlier. That space is going to have an element of commoditization within. Now, I don't know which one will win. I think Claude 3 was released a couple of days ago. Obviously, OpenAI has got GPT-4 out there. The open source models are coming out that people are training on are good too. But for us, if we see that as going to be fundamental to the core of what's going to be going on in business, we want to make sure that we have the most seamless interaction possible with those LLMs. And so what does that mean? I think of it as, if the LLM is a complex brain, Speechmatics is building the complex listening system, the complex sort of the ears, the cochlea, the eardrum, whatever it may be, to understand as seamlessly as possible what's being said. So that's high accuracy, but it's also high latency. It's all the things that Martin mentioned earlier. It's the diarization, it's the speaker change, the numbering coming out correctly, being rendered, being able to add specific words if you need to on the fly. And then also we're exploring the possibility of sort of picking up the other end of the chain as well. So if we do the input, also then taking the output, so sort of the text-to-speech element side of the synthesis side of things, so the response that goes back to the human. Now, this is obviously, that's all in a sort of very real-time environment, but everything that is at the forefront of that real-time can then be accelerated and improved many-fold over for sort of the offline and non-live situations too, which we'd be exploring both of those with Limecraft. But that's our vision. LLMs are here to stay.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make ourselves the most agnostic complex interaction system with them?
And Martin, same crystal ball question for you, I guess. What excites you about the next 3 to 5 years in media and production as far as AI is concerned?
Well, what excites me is that from a macroscopic point of view, Europe is at an interesting point of doing something different and better than some of the big tech companies with super deep pockets at the other side of the ocean. You know, in Europe, we're more creative. We'll do it differently. We don't have the same amounts of venture capital as some big tech companies in US, but I see a modus operandi of doing business in Europe, whereby media producers engage in co-production projects, and I see the same happening in tech landscape. We'll have to take a different approach in Europe, and by teaming up smaller companies, super specialized, best in class, that are loosely coupled, but really important, we'll take responsibility over the integration and the good functioning and the service level agreements. The end result will be a flexible system of collaborative players, a business model which is much more resilient to effects coming from abroad, more flexible, more scalable. And I think Speechmatics, Limecraft, and a few other peers, that's a very good example of how we can support the media business in a better way than what big tech is currently doing.
Okay, well, that feels like a good place for us to wrap things up and bring this session to a close. Thank you to both of our guests today, Ricardo and Martin, for your time. For more information about Speechmatics' range of services, you can have a look at their website. That is speechmatics.com. And to learn more about Limecraft's platform that supports media content production and delivery, head over to limecraft.com. Once again, thanks to our guests, thanks to you for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.